What's your legacy? How's the company going to look when you hand it off to your successors? Well, this might be a great time to start thinking about building that legacy. We'd like to help. I'd like to talk about management development at Fusion Group and how we'd like to introduce principled leadership to the mix that will change and improve the legacy you leave behind. Principled leadership. George Bernard Shaw said there's only one religion, though it goes by many names. What he was referring to was what we call the perennial philosophy, the wisdom tradition of mankind going back thousands of years, starting with the golden rule. Treat people as you would have them treat you. Probably a good article of faith in a management canon. Well, we'd suggest that bringing principled leadership into being doesn't happen without having access to the first principles, and it also doesn't happen without a vehicle for making those principles part of the daily practices of your organization. So our vehicles for introducing these principles to your company are the Executive Council Program and the Management Practices Program. So let's take a minute, talk about first principles, and then talk about the programs we use to introduce them to your house. What about first principles? Well, first off, we think holistic management is a big part of it. We call it fusion because we believe that a human being has a body, a mind, and a spirit. And if you manage all three, you tend to get a much better, a much more complete result than if you try and manage merely the body. Of course, a lot of people will say, well, I can't see the mind and I have no idea how to apprehend the existence of the spirit. What are you talking about? We're saying, well, you know, there's a lot to life. There's what you can see and there's what you can't see. The stuff you can't see often makes the stuff you can see worth having and worth looking at. And that's one of the first discussions that we do with our management practices students, because you've got to learn how to manage more than bodies. Fusion. Now, what about other principles? Well, how about ethics? Now, everyone we know says, I'm an ethical person. The scary part is that they all define ethics differently. And so they can be practicing their version of ethics day in and day out, and yet all behaving differently and all doing things that we would really hate to see happening on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. So the discussion about what ethics means and how it's practiced in your organization is what we'd like to help you bring about. We don't have an answer for you. We'd love to help you frame the debate of what is ethical and draw a bright line in the sand for your people so they know what's going to be tolerated and what will absolutely not be tolerated. Dimensional ethics is where we start. Then there's success reluctance, the tendency of people and organizations to get in their own way. Maybe it's just a bureaucratic boondoggle. Maybe it's a fear of taking a risk, but management's job is to find any barrier and remove it so people feel free and safe about moving forward and going quickly together to a more successful future. It's interesting when you start discussing success reluctance, everybody says, well, I'm not reluctant, I'm doing just great, but I haven't taken any risks lately. I haven't pushed my people to take risks, and as a result, we're kind of stuck. So often the discussion about this issue is the place where people begin to be aware of the fact that a lot of the barriers to their own success are internal, and they need to be discussed to bring them out to a point where you can actually see them. What else? What about the discussion of viability versus profitability? Something that has great importance in the market as we see it today, because everybody was concerned about making the profit for next quarter. Nobody was thinking about the next 20 years. And as a result, we're in a terrible situation that's going to take a long time to resolve. Viability means that you leave the company better than you found it. And it may take 20 years to have that stock appreciate to the point where you really are going to make a profit when selling it. So we need to get used to the idea of getting rich slowly. Viability versus profitability. Then there's servant management. The idea that you are entrusted with a group of people and an enterprise, and your job is to make the enterprise and the people better, safer, more productive, and more viable than when you took over. Servant management. Serving the legitimate needs of the people in the organization so that they can serve the needs of your client base. Now, that doesn't mean you need to be a complacent, compassionate wimp. It simply means that you need to serve people's legitimate needs and nudge them, push them, cajole them, cheer them, and do whatever it takes, including tickling them under the chin, in order to get them to be productive and happy. One of my favorite people said, well, you know, I've been a servant manager all my life. And I've said, now, I'm amazed. You seem to have more enthusiastic people in your organization than anybody anywhere. How do you get them all to be that way? He said, oh, I didn't get them to be that way. I just got rid of everybody who wasn't. So servant managers are still dictators, I believe, but not merely dictators, benevolent ones. Again, a wonderful debate, a wonderful discussion to initiate as we start trying to introduce principled leadership into your organization. Well, now those are a sampler of some of the principles, but how are they available? Well, first in the Executive Council program, which is built for individuals, it's personal, it's private, and it's confidential. It can happen here in our offices in Florida, which are a great place to come and see an organization built from the ground up around a set of principles, so that our space reflects our philosophy. That often sets off some pretty powerful discussions about how deeply first principles can be built into the surface of an organization, into the foundation of an organization. But perhaps you need to have a discussion from the train platform in New Jersey while you're waiting to go into Manhattan to give a keynote speech. All right, pick up the cell phone and we'll be on the other end. Maybe you need us to write that keynote speech in the hotel the night before you're going to give it. All right. Maybe you need to bring the management team from around the globe into a central location and discuss the merger, the new positioning, the new name for the organization, and how you're going to talk about the organization both internally and externally. No problem. We've done it many times. Executive Council is designed to serve the needs of the executive who's going to lead the organization and build a legacy. And we build it to suit your needs. Now, management practices. Perhaps the similar principles are being applied here, but now in the context of a management team. So certainly it's going to be a little bit more general, still tailored, still focused on the issues that are resonant for your team under these circumstances, but now in a group situation. We're finding that management teams are very difficult to pin down these days, and so we've come up with what we think is a genuinely new approach to packaging and delivering material for management teams. We call it multidimensional corporate development. And think in terms of, rather than only doing work in print, or only doing work in the form of a seminar, or only doing work in person, it's a combination of all those things. Part of it is a seminar, and then it's a webinar, and then it's a management forum on the web where your people can log in individually and then download micro video movies on a particular first principle and then enjoy a web dialogue about the issues that were in that movie. And then perhaps we get together quickly for a micro meeting in the Admirals Club conference room in Dallas. And then we come back for a seminar at the end of the year. I think the easiest way to understand this concept of how to build a management growth program is, how would you like your Fusion today? Well, that's a quick overview of management development at Fusion. First principles, principled leadership, available for individual executives privately or for management teams, however you'd like it constructed. We're in the business of helping you build your legacy, and we'd like your organization to help you and everybody connected with it get rich slowly.